Hello and welcome to this FashionFix webinar as part of Climate Action Week. My name is Grania Ryan and I'm a Climate Action Officer for Green Schools and the Climate Ambassador Programme. Now this is our 5th National Climate Action Week and we've had a really incredible response to screening the true cost. I think at my last count about 345 classes in Ireland have watched the documentary since Monday and learned all about fast fashion. So that's an estimated, I think, about 8,000 students. So yeah, imagine what we can all do together if we actually embrace slow or sustainable fashion from today, if you don't already. So I have some still shots from the film just to remind you. So it told the story about the clothes we wear, the people that made them, and the impact the industry is having on the planet. Now, the price of clothing has been decreasing for decades, but the human and environmental costs have grown dramatically. And I know parts of the film were difficult to watch and chilling, but knowledge really is power. And now we know what's wrong with the fast fashion industry. We can choose to rebel against it. In 2013, I had the amazing opportunity of doing this postgrad internship in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, which features heavily in the true cost. And when I was there, I was mostly working, but I did have a chance to go and see some of the historical features like this temple near Siem Reap and the heartbreaking killing fields just outside of Phnom Penh. On the day that I traveled to the killing fields, I saw truckloads of young women and teenage girls being transported, and it reminded me of seeing animals going to slaughter. They were all standing pinned into the back of this open truck, bombing along this dirt track road. And later that day, I found out that H&M and Zara both had factories about an hour from where I was living at the time. So, I guess before that day, I had thought about high street brands and how the clothes were made so cheaply. And to be completely honest, I did know about some of the environmental impacts and the polluting impacts in the fashion industry. But after seeing that in front of me, it was different. It was so stark and just really unforgettable. So if you feel the same after watching The True Cost, then you're in the right place today. Today, we're going to aim to leave you feeling empowered and inspired. But before I introduce our host and wonderful panelists, I'd like to share a quick video that me and my colleagues put together last month as part of Secondhand September.
Hi, I'm Kathy.
I'm Joanne, and we're here in sunny Dunleary today with €50 to spend. We're on an outfit for one of us in charity shops.
It's Secondhand September, so we're going to hit the shops.
Yay!
You're lovely.
Yay, Secondhand September.
All right. So if you want to let us know in the chat box, which team do you think will be crowned the Climate Action Week fashionistas? Will it be Team Cork, Team Liberties, Team Dunleary, and Team D7? And while you're doing that, I'm going to introduce our fabulous panelists and ask them to pop their video feed on as I introduce each of them. So I'll stop sharing that. Oh, and there they are. Amazing. So good to see you all. So first up today, we have Kelly Dalton, founder of The Right Project. Kelly is a sustainability strategy expert, responsible fashion advisor, and has worked with brands like Burberry, Vivienne Westwood, Manolo Blahnik, and Netta Porter. I'm probably saying some of them wrong, but she can let me know later. She was also a strategist at the change agency Futura, where she worked on sustainability strategies for the North Face, VF Corps, Mars, and Lancome. And her expertise lies in supporting brands to drive positive social and environmental impact, giving fashion professionals the skills to create meaningful and measurable change. Kelly, thank you so much for joining our panel today.
Oh, thanks
Oh
so
dear.
much for having me. I'm really excited to speak to everyone today.
Amazing. And hopefully my voice holds out for another couple of minutes before I hand over to
No,
Fionnuala.
we can take over. It's fine.
Amazing. And then next, I'm just absolutely delighted to introduce one of our climate ambassadors, Natalie Pavone. Natalie has a background in marketing and sustainability communications and works with Business in the Community Ireland. She's co-founder of the Sustainable Life School, a social enterprise with the mission to help people live more sustainably through a step-by-step program. Natalie leads the Sustainable Fashion class, where she raises awareness of the negative impacts associated with the current fast fashion model and helps participants rethink and change their relationship with clothes. Natalie, thank you so much for being here today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your journey.
Thank you for having me. Really excited.
Amazing. And last but certainly not least, we have our fabulously fully passionate and outspoken host, Fionnuala Moran. So Fionnuala is a broadcaster and environmentalist, and while her environmental interests spanned back to her school days, New Year resolutions to go vegan and quit fast fashion in 2018 and 19 spurred on her sustainability efforts. And this has now spread to every aspect of her life and led her to swap entertainment reporting for environmentally focused work. And last year, she returned to DCU to study the MSc in climate change, media policy and society. It's a great course if any students out there want to pursue climate communications. Fionnuala also showcases emerging Irish artists on RTE Pulse and uses her social media platforms to educate people about sustainability. So if you don't follow her already, go and find her on Instagram. Fionnuala, thanks so much for hosting our panel discussion today. I'm really looking forward to hearing what the three of you have to say.
My absolute pleasure. I'm so delighted 8,000 people are equipped with the insight and the knowledge that documentary gives, because I don't think you can unsee it, as hard as it is to watch in parts.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think if anyone out there today is feeling like, you know, I actually watched it this time in 3 parts, you know, because I've seen it a couple of times before, but it was like, okay, I'll do 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. But hopefully after today, they'll all be feeling massively inspired. But yeah, without further ado, I will hand over to you, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Bye.
Incredible. Let's get going. So I am so excited to chat to these amazing women. We have so much to say as well, because they have had really incredible sustainability journeys. And I'd just like to start by congratulating all the students and teachers watching today for powering through that documentary. I've watched it twice now. The first time I watched it, it catalyzed my entire sustainable fashion journey. I went in a 6-month buying ban. I am still only buying secondhand clothes and going to start looking into maybe slow fashion down the line now as well, as that industry is improving. But it totally changed my life from a consumption perspective. So congratulations to all of you. And I'm really excited to see the journeys that it takes you all on as well. So to kick things off, I'd love to delve a little bit more into Kelly and Natalie's journey. So Natalie, you might start off by just explaining how sustainability became such a big thing in your life.
Yeah, thanks, Fionnuala. Yeah, I mean, like you, I think, you know, watching the True Cost was a turning point in my life, because I was already working for Business in the Community. Business in the Community is a non-profit business network that helps companies become more sustainable. So I was actually already in the area. But I guess I didn't really link in my professional life with my personal life. And it was really watching the True Cost that was, like you, it was really a turning point. It was a catalyst then for change, because I started with fashion, but then I started to look at other areas and improved, you know, in other area like, you know, transport or other, you know, lifestyle. But it was really fashion where I concentrated at the start. And when I watched the first, and I'm hoping that, you know, we can help, you know, everybody here on the call today, because when I watched it, I felt really overwhelmed, you know, and I started to think of, you know, my first reaction was, oh my God, I have all these brands in my wardrobe. I have Zara, I have H&M, I have, you know, and I, you know, so it was very overwhelming. And at the point, there wasn't as much information that there is right now and awareness. But then obviously I kind of clicked in that, you know, they say the most sustainable clothes are the one in your wardrobes. So that's one thing that I would say to everybody, you know, not to feel guilty about the clothes that you have already.
Absolutely. I've had that question before from people who've started sustainable fashion journeys, and they're like, oh, do I need to go and buy a whole new capsule wardrobe of sustainable products? I'm like, no, because that's still loads of new consumption. So like, as you're bringing new items in, if you can do that more sustainably or secondhand where possible, brilliant. But you don't absolutely need to go out and buy anything new to start a sustainability journey. You can be on one overnight like that. I think that's brilliant advice. And Kelly, would you walk us through your sustainability journey as well? You've worked with some incredible brands.
Yeah, it's a funny one for me. I think it was just a bit of like luck and timing, because when I started to work in the area, it's probably like 18, 20 years ago now. So it's a really long time. And at that time, there was only a handful of kind of mainstream designers who were starting to focus on, you know, having better materials or looking at where their clothing was manufactured. And I was studying in DCU, and I needed to do a case study on a designer. So I wrote to like a bunch of those smaller companies, and one designer immediately got back to me, and her name was Catherine Hamnett. And people mightn't be familiar with who she is, but she was a huge designer in internationally, but particularly in the UK in the 80s and 90s. So like things like slogan t-shirts and stonewash denim and parachute dungarees, all that kind of like stuff that we still wear now, she had designed all them at the time. But she did a piece of work with a piece of research with Greenpeace and a few of her other colleagues into the social and environmental issues of the fashion industry in 1989. And she was the first designer who started to look at that. But she wrote back to me and was like, yes, absolutely, come and do a case study. And do you want to work for me? And I was like, oh, I'm going to go to London and work in fashion. This is so cool. Kind of knowing a little bit about the issues, but not really thinking. And if I'm honest, I was thinking, I'm going to get on the party scene in London and I'm going to meet all these people and it's going to be this amazing experience. And it definitely was, but it completely changed the course of what I thought I was going to be getting into working in fashion, because my first job for her was researching cotton farmers in Mali for a trip that she was going to with Oxfam. And that was a very, poignant turning point. Like we're talking about turning points in my consciousness about what the fashion industry was, because I always just saw the aesthetic. And my mum made clothes, and she actually was a home worker for some big Irish brands at the time. So she would make the things at home and they would be sent to the designers. So I was very aware of like the craft and everything, but not at that scale in the industry, and not really what went into making clothes in terms of like the environmental inputs, like the water and the chemicals, and even farming. Like farming is part of fashion and people have no realization of that. And I certainly didn't. So that was the beginning. And it's just been this very slow, long learning journey. But I just feel now, I'm so excited for everyone who's getting into the industry now or getting into this headspace now, because the information is all there. And it can be overwhelming, like you say, to take it all on immediately. But actually, your journey can be much quicker than mine was. It doesn't need to take as long as I've been at it. You know, you can catch up to it really, really quickly. And there's so many exciting like jobs in the area and opportunities to be involved now. So yeah, it was really that one turning point. And then, yeah, you see these things like documentaries or extra pieces of information that can be really hard to digest, but actually they can just empower you more, in that you know that there's better ways to do things. So it just spurs you on to the next thing.
Incredible advice. I think breaking down that cognitive dissonance, it's not something you can come back from. I couldn't anyway. And it's just led to such an exciting journey. And I treasure everything in my wardrobe so much more now than I did 2 or 3 years ago. Just to stay on that point, Kelly, about how the industry is changing, I've no doubt there's people tuning in today who want to work in the industry, but want to do good and don't want to be part of, say, the Shines or the Boohoo's or any of those people involved with like mass production. And then we saw the claims of human slavery, people being paid £350 in the UK last year by Boohoo. So what advice would you give for people who want to go into the industry, but in a positive way?
So there's a few different routes that you can go in. I mean, there is if you want to go down, if you're into starting up your own brand, there's obviously that route, and you can go down that yourself and focus on kind of locally made and being very conscious of the materials that you use, that they are more sustainable materials. So there's that aspect. But actually in the fashion industry, really, it's like any industry. You can be in law and be in sustainability in the fashion industry. You can be in accounting, you can be a designer, you can be a model. It's this huge, big, broad industry with a million different types of careers within it, but it just happens to be one of the creative industries. So I think my main piece of advice is educate yourself as much as possible about sustainability, because it is really a broad subject now. It's not just about materials and manufacturing. We're talking about things like, you know, obviously there's all the environmental aspects like carbon emissions and water use and environmental pollution, but we're talking about really serious social issues now, like diversity and inclusion and anti-racism and poverty wages and all of these kind of things. So you can specialize in particular areas. So what I would advise everyone to do is just do some broad research. So True Cost is the first stop, and then we go from there, and we can recommend some social media accounts and things like that to follow and different books towards the end. But just build up your knowledge as you go and kind of pick the area that you want to go into. And then if you want to go to university, do that. If you want to go straight into the workplace, just try and identify companies that you think match your values. And you know what, even if you do end up going into one of the big mass market brands, the thing about them is you very quickly get an insight into how the industry actually works. And then you can get onto a sustainability team possibly there, and then kind of step out with some experience and go, okay, now I'm equipped to really go off and do what I want to do, depending on how deep you want to get into sustainability. But I definitely think just educate yourself as much as possible about how broad sustainability is now is a really good starting point.
Amazing. And Natalie, when you were watching back, you were kind of struck by the things that had and hadn't changed since you last watched the documentary. Do you want to walk us through some of those?
Yeah. So it was a few years since I watched it, so I was actually really curious to see how I was going to feel. And you know, there's definitely, you know, some positive trends that we can talk about later, but in terms of, you know, what has changed, you know, so one positive thing I suppose is that brands have been working on it. And, you know, since the Rana Plaza, you know, that's when, you know, the Rana Plaza collapse was a really tough watch, and it was, you know, a main global news internationally. So a lot of things happened and brands started to work together. So just in September, the new international accord for the health and safety of garment workers and, you know, people working in the fashion in those factories, you know, was just signed again by over 77 brands. So that means that something is happening to make sure that the factories where the garment workers are more regularly monitored, and there's a system in place for complaints so that they can have their voice heard. So that's, I guess, you know, brands are working on it because they do feel the pressures from consumer to do something on that. But that's one thing, and it kind of feels like, you know, progress isn't moving, you know, fast enough, because like you were mentioning, Fionnuala, about, you know, the garment workers in the UK, so much closer to home, because when we think about fast fashion, we always think about Bangladesh and Cambodia, but in the UK, exactly, Boohoo. You know, there was that scandal last year when COVID started. They made their workers go to work even when there was a lockdown, which, you know, kind of spread the outbreak. And also, you know, there wasn't a lot of safety there. And then another, you know, I guess, you know, thing that hasn't changed is that there's still, you know, workers, you know, in the garment industry that aren't earning that living wage that the documentary was talking about. And there's a great organization called the Clean Clothes Campaign that advocates for that. And I was really following the campaign last year, because when COVID started, billions of orders were cancelled by brands when they shut their stores. And so these brands didn't pay the factories that made the clothes. So they already had their own expenses of paying for fabrics. So basically workers, you know, didn't get paid, and a lot of them lost their jobs. So there was a list of companies that you could check, the ones that didn't pay for the orders and the one that paid. And thankfully, you know, that list was decreasing, but there's still, you know, a lot to be doing there. And so I think from a social point of view, I think there are still a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of issues, and especially around that living wage, making sure that, you know, the garment workers, you know, earn that living wage. And then I suppose there's the environmental impact that obviously we've seen, you know, in the documentary about, you know, the toxic chemicals in the communities. But then something that I suppose is increasing a little bit more in awareness is that problem with waste, which is, you know, I guess it's a negative trend that is coming out. You know, all these clothes that we're buying, there's mountains of clothes in landfills, and which are having a negative impact on the planet, but also on the communities where these clothes are ending up. So I guess, you know, that's the kind of change that hasn't happened yet. And so it makes the documentary, I suppose, unfortunately, really still relevant today.
Yeah, fingers crossed not for much longer.
Yeah.
But like you were saying there with the waste, I saw even the Coach TikTok. I don't know if you guys have seen that, of the gal who got all these secondhand Coach bags or wherever she found them, but they were all slashed because, like Burberry had been doing a few years ago, I think they were still getting rid of all their stock, destroying it to keep the market value high, which I just thought was bananas in the face of the climate crisis that we're heading into now. So as you're saying there as well, Clean Clothes Org, any of these things, you can work in the fashion industry and work in making it better, I suppose, is another route people could go down if they still do want to be involved as well, which is fantastic. You mentioned the Rana Plaza tragedy there. That is a really, really hard bit of the documentary to watch as well. I also found Shima's story, having to leave her daughter behind with her parents, was just so tough to watch. And then also the Cambodian worker's funeral, where the poor man talking about him trying to protest the bare minimum he should have been allowed to ask for being killed. Really, really standout, difficult to watch moments for me that kind of moved me to action. I'm wondering if there was any moments like that in the documentary for you, or in life in general, that you've had along this sustainable fashion journey that really kind of spurred on your motivation to do good.
Yeah, well, I guess it was like you, Finola, I have to say, I had the same feelings. It was those stories. It was that mom, you know, that couldn't spend enough time with her kid, and you know, and yeah, I remember, you know, the Rana Plaza, like I remember being shocked and being really upset about it, to be honest. And so that was definitely what, you know, what kind of motivated me at the start. And then it was, so straight away, I kind of, the clothes, after having that initial feeling guilty about it for having those brands, they actually gained a more value, because even if I didn't stop straight away to, you know, buying from fast fashion brands, they had more value. I didn't want to, you know, get rid of them that quickly. So they became something that if I bought something because I needed it, you know, I would ask myself, am I going to have this, you know, nearly forever, you know, or am I, you know, or for a really long time? So I guess, you know, and that's the motivation then that, you know, that kind of keeps me going, is really, you know, being involved, you know, for example, like with Climate Ambassadors and you know, and following those campaigns like Fashion Revolution, and just seeing, you know, the positive trends that are around. I think there's definitely, you know, there's a lot of negativity, but I want to say that I do feel really positive, because I think there's definitely a movement rising, you know, and you know, and I think it's gonna happen. You know, I think we're gonna fix that.
And it's been a really fun movement so far. So when I came out into this, I didn't have a clue what sustainable fashion meant. It wasn't really in the headlines. Secondhand September hadn't even started. And now 2-3 years later, it's so much fun. Everyone's doing amazing challenges all the time. The whatever kind of weird snobbiness around secondhand shopping, I think, is almost totally faded away. That used to be a thing where people were like, oh, but like, do the clothes in charity shops smell, or did someone die in them? Like really bizarre questions. And I was like, no, that's obviously not what a charity shop is like.
Yeah.
So I've seen so many people getting involved, and friends who used to like kind of be like, whoa, at like secondhand shopping are now like bragging when they find bits secondhand. So it's become this flex that everyone wants to get involved with, which I think is incredible. Kelly, I might chat to you about this, because I know a lot of brands are kind of working it in now, and just with reselling cultures and everything like that, we've seen a surge with Depop, Thriftify, all of these amazing platforms that didn't exist when I was a teenager, that I would have loved to have had, because you can get amazing bargains on them. But just with the circular economy and all of us now moving from take, make, waste and send everything off to landfill to really kind of extend products lifestyles, how have you seen brands adopting that? I know you've done work with North Face, and from looking on Depop, their resale value is insane there.
Yeah, I mean, it's that idea again about, yes, we should value our clothes more, but actually companies that are producing clothes should value the resources that they're putting into them. So there's two things. The first one you said there is extending the life of clothes as long as possible. So you'll see brands, they give out advice about how to care for your clothes. They might give advice about how you can repair it yourselves. They might offer repair services, and they'll think about how they design things from the very beginning, about, is this going to be designed for durability? Are the materials much better quality, so that they'll last a long time? And then you get into the idea that if something is actually kind of not repairable yourself, or even if they take it back and repair to you, that it can be resold on their site. So you see the North Face and Patagonia, they do these refurbished product sites. There's just so much happening in the space. It's amazing to see what the different brands are doing. But the most exciting thing, I think, is the resale platforms, because they're set to double in size compared to fast fashion by 2030. So it's set to overtake what's happening there. So I mean, fingers crossed, because for me, I know we talk about circularity a lot in fashion, and you'll see lots of brands marketing about circularity, but actually true circularity doesn't exist. And it is definitely a journey towards it. And we're on this journey of innovation and, technology and everything that's going to be put in place. But we're really, really far away from that. So yes, we can do all these things about repair and resell, and they extend the life of products. But for a product to be, let's say, fully circular, it needs to be broken down into tiny little parts and then remade back into the exact same materials and exact same products that was there before. Now, some companies are doing this on a really small pilot scale, and it's great to see that happening, but we're so far away from that really what we need to be doing is slowing down buying new clothes. And the answer to that is obviously wearing what you own, repairing what you have, buying secondhand first, always. And that's the thing. And I know it's one of those things that I really hope to see more in the mainstream, because I am definitely hopeful, but I'm also slightly skeptical, if I'm honest, because the other thing that we see is the rise of ultra fast fashion brands. Yeah. And during the pandemic, what we saw while everything else slowed down was those profits of those kinds of companies skyrocket. So I always think of myself, I'm sort of in my sustainable fashion bubble, in my London bubble, in my fashion industry bubble. And then I think about all of the whole entire rest of the industry that actually profits for those companies are going through the roof. And what we need to do is take everything that we've learned from True Cost and the bits of information that we have, and where education and awareness are amazing, we need to turn that into action. We need more people doing more of these things. And like you said, it's fun. I mean, it's a totally different way of approaching fashion and creativity, because I don't know about other people, but I walk into shops now. I mean, aside from the fact I see supply chains unfolding before my eyes and I can't deal with that, that's a different thing. A lot of the clothes are really boring now. Everything is the same. Everyone looks the same. And there's an element of that. I know when you're young and you want to, hang out with your friends and everyone's kind of got the same cool things going on, which is great. But actually, it can just be so much more creative to go on these resale sites. Like you mentioned, Thriftify. Like when I was growing up in Ireland, if Thriftify was there, I would have been like in my element. But like Depop, Thriftify, Vinted, there's just so many. I mean, Vestiaire Collective, if you're into your like super high-end stuff and you want to save up a bit for that, there's just so much more that you can do now. And if you do see high-end cool designer stuff in the catwalk, if I'm honest, what I do now is I buy secondhand all the time. I just head on over to eBay and I go and look for it there instead in a few months' time. So there is definitely a lot that we can do. And I mean, brands are working on it, but I do think as everyday people, we need to kind of take our power back and look at how we spend our money, because not to be like money is power, but it is. I mean, where the industry will go, where our money goes, and the more of us that can shift our money into better practices in the industry, the better. And especially if they're fun, because like you said, that documentary, it's so hard to watch, but unfortunately that is the reality of what's going on. So while you can sit with the discomfort of how that makes you feel, and that's the reality in the world, we do in our own small ways have the power to change that. Because when I started out in the industry as long ago as I did, there was not really many people talking about it. And the reason we're even here today having this panel discussion is because of the small actions of thousands and thousands of people all over the world, not just at brands or consumers, but down in supply chains, environmental activists, everyone just doing their bit and just making it happen and building this momentum. So yeah, I just encourage everyone to just shift their money where they think things match their values a bit more.
Incredible. We've touched on so much stuff there. I'm aware there's some amazing questions coming through now as well, so I want to make sure we get to them too. But just before you mentioned there about bringing it into the mainstream, I found something that I had to do, and I think this would be really relevant to everyone watching today, was curating my social feeds very specifically, so I was no longer seeing all of the ads being bombarded with PLT, Boohoo every second Insta story, and then I wasn't seeing all the influencers advertising them as well. I just found that was giving me anxiety once I knew the reality of what they were promoting, and like I was just thinking of Shima leaving her child and everything else like that, and the factory collapse, and then seeing the I work with Primark hashtags from like these really privileged white women over here in their like whatever gorgeous new loungewear sets, and they're getting paid more for that single social media post that took probably an hour to do than that poor garment worker who made the clothes is getting paid for the whole year. So I just edited all of that out. I think we all go and find really fun people who are doing sustainable stuff, really cool upcyclers, celebrities like Aisling B, who are, as you said, using the platform to make secondhand mainstream, I think are incredible people to follow, and anything like that. And you're doing so well. I might start firing through some of these questions here just so we make sure everyone gets the advice. Joanne, who has accidentally signed in as Bridget, has asked 2 questions, or the other way around, sorry, Bridget signed in as Joanne, asking how do we encourage our family and friends to embrace slow fashion? And then after that as well, she's also wondered about the plastics in the circular economy and reusing all of those in our clothes. I'd largely say try to avoid clothes with plastics in them. Now that said, that's tricky now, but saying during the wash, there are still microplastics releasing. What are your thoughts on this? To answer the second bit of that question, I have a guppy bag, which is a thing. I think they cost about €20. I got mine about 2 years ago. It's still going. And you can put your clothes in that and it stops the microplastics getting out into the water supply. So it's not going back into the ocean. So that's what I do for that. Would you guys like to come in on that? And then maybe how to encourage family and friends as well?
Just one quick thing on the microplastics. So 60% of clothing in the world is made from synthetic fibers, which is basically polyester, nylon, fossil fuel derived materials. And we all know fossil fuels are causing carbon emissions to go up, never mind the plastic pollution. It's really, really difficult to avoid synthetic clothing. Even if you're buying secondhand, chances are, because lots of the stuff that's flooding onto the market now is made from synthetic clothing. So definitely educate yourself a little bit about materials and always check the label. So you'll see pieces of clothing will say 100% cotton or 50% polyester, 30% acrylic, whatever it is. Anything that's acrylic, nylon, polyester, polyamide, avoid if you can. If you can't, like Fionnuala said, get yourself a guppy bag. There's a Cora ball. If you can convince your parents to get microplastic filters for the washing machine, do it. They're about 35 quid online. But what I will say is that a lot of time it feels like loads of this stuff is being put back on the consumer to sort out. And I know I did say that a few minutes ago about spending your money where you can, but just so you know, there's industry initiatives happening at a really high level and legislation being, let's say, discussed at the moment about how they can control this, because microplastics and microfibers, it's absolutely out of control. It's everywhere. It's in our air, it's in our water, it's in our soil. But on the microfibers front, there's a group, if anyone's really interested in this, called the Microfiber Consortium, and they've just launched their Microfiber Roadmap 2030. And it's a collaborative roadmap for all brands globally to join to try and get on top of the microfiber situation. So while you're kind of doing your own thing and trying to kind of control how you kind of interact with clothes made from plastics, just know that this other stuff is happening within the industry at a much higher level to try and control it as well.
Incredible. And I think that kind of brings us back from personal responsibility as well to active citizenship. So if you go and tell brands, I don't want this made of plastic, I don't want microplastics in my water, my washing machine, everywhere else, they will hopefully listen to us. Like just giving the feedback to politicians, brands, whoever is massively important. And as you said, like there is so much power in how we spend our money. Encouraging family and friends to embrace slow fashion. This can be a tricky one, I think, depending on whatever way your friends are inclined about it. I think the increasing exposure to it all the time and making it really fun is a great way to do it. Natalie, do you have any advice from all of the work that you do in this space?
Yeah, well, I think what I've been doing, over the years, it's just kind of trying to be, like they say, the change you want to be, and kind of being that kind of role model thing. So I tried a few approaches, So I did go through the nagging route. I did that. I did say, did you know that, blah, blah, blah. And that wasn't really working. So then what I tried to do is I buy a, pre-loved So, and if somebody would say something, oh, that's really nice, and I would tell the story, oh yeah, I got that on adverts and it was only €10, and it's still looking good. So I would, would do that. And also with my mom, say for example, she's not on the call, so hopefully she's not going to hear this, but she's really actually, she loves fashion, and she's Italian, and it's just her thing. And what has helped for me was just to kind of have chats about, like, when I watched the documentary, I said, about, that waste problem, that we're buying too many clothes, and kind of trying to have the chat with her about, do you know what actually happens when you get rid of the clothes that you don't want after 6 months time? And just having that conversation that say, when you bring it to charity, for example, not everything it's sold in the charity shop. A lot of then, goes into, developing countries where they have to kind of sort out that problem, and it's causing an environmental impact as well. And I remember that she was kind of like surprised, and she just didn't know. So I guess it's about, being that role model yourself, doing kind of those things about buying pre-loved, buying less, buying from sustainable brands, having those conversations, and then as well, creating that awareness, I think, in a kind of a nice way, without kind of pointing the fingers and things like that. Because we're all on a journey, I think. That's what we say, the Sustainable Life School. It's about small changes. You don't have to be, perfect for, and get rid of all your clothes and all these kind of things. So it's a journey.
Absolutely. I'm 2 to 3 years into it now, and I'm still doing wardrobe clearance. I've still got too much stuff. I think as well, we all love a bargain. We can't lie. So if you can get them to come into charity shop with you, if you're out doing shopping one day, or if you're organizing a swap shop locally with your friends or anything like that, I think that's a fantastic way to do it. And something as simple as borrowing your friend's clothes, that's sustainable fashion. So if it's a really specific event, say you're coming into Deb season, anything like that, your school could even set up maybe a dress sharing system, anything like that. I know I have friends that shop my wardrobe all the time. They're like, hey, I saw you wore this to that, can I have it for this, or whatever else? Especially now coming into the wedding age, very, very relevant for us, all of the kind of occasion wear dresses. A question there from Gary is, any advice about sportswear? I find it hard to get secondhand shop training clothes, and impossible to get in secondhand runners to train in. Gary, those are from Depop. I've had really good luck with secondhand runners and gym wear. It might be a bit easier for gals at the moment. I feel like we're the majority on the reselling apps at the minute. I don't know if that's a cultural thing that will catch up. But Etsy, brilliant for vintage tracksuits, which I love, as is Depop. And there was another place that I got some brilliant ones as well.
I think the new wardrobe, I use the new
Yes.
wardrobe a lot, and I got a couple of hoodies actually. So that's a good one as well, because you give your clothes away, you get a token that you can use to then. So it's kind of like, swapping, but online. And I found that really good.
Incredible. Kelly, is there any you'd recommend?
Just on the sportswear thing, I think if you can't find it on a secondhand site, again, it's just that thing of looking at new brands and asking the questions. So you want to look for labor standards. What are they saying? Are they talking about paying living wages, and what the materials are? Because I do know it's difficult and you end up having to buy new things. But then if you do find a new thing from a more mainstream brand, just wear it loads. Like, I'm always amazed now at how commercialized sportswear has become, and how trend and fashion orientated it's become. Because at the end of the day, let's face it, we all want to look nice, but you just need a pair of leggings, or a t-shirt, or a vest top, or whatever it is, and a good pair of trainers to go. But use them for as long as possible, and try not to give in to that thing of like having to constantly have the best or the newest gear all the time. Like, I mean, God, if anyone who sees me going running in my local park with my t-shirts with the holes in them and stuff, because I just don't care. I'm like, I'm sweating into these clothes, so this is what happens. But anyway, I do know we all want to look nice, but it's just ask those questions of brands if you are going to go, and again, give them your hard-earned money, because we're investing in them, and we're investing in a system. So yeah, but sportswear is tricky, because I mean, we just talked about microfibers a second ago, and that's something hugely that the sportswear industry is grappling with, because I saw someone mention recycled plastic in the comments, of recycled polyester. yes, technically recycled polyester is slightly good in some ways, but actually you're coming up against the same microfiber issues as well. So yeah, it's a tricky area, but you can maybe not be the best you can be with buying a product, but you can definitely do something that's better than just buying straightforward new conventional products on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And plastic gets worse and worse quality every time you recycle it. It's not infinitely recyclable like say glass or aluminium, which are brilliant materials. So that's a tricky one there again. A question there, what's an ethical clothes store that's affordable and available in Ireland? Fresh Cuts in Dublin is the main one jumping to my mind. Would you guys have any suggestions?
Well, I think Grown is a good one as well. Grown, so they're they're Irish, and they're actually they have really nice hoodies and t-shirts, and they're made in Ireland, and the fabrics come from from Bangladesh, but they're they're sustainably sourced, and I think they have a lot of information on the website, and also I think they plant a tree from every garment that they sell. So I thought that was a nice one, because obviously as well supporting anything that it's made in Ireland it's great, and they're really nice.
Incredible. And then another question there is, do you think social media is increasing fast fashion consumption, or do you think platforms like Depop are making pre-loved clothes accessible?
I will say, I think it's increasing fast fashion consumption. I don't have the figures to back that up, but just kind of anecdotally from my own work. And again, it's just back to that thing that fast fashion, it's even been coined ultra fast fashion now because it's faster than fast fashion used to be, is massively on the rise. So, I mean, you made such an excellent point earlier on, Fionnuala, about curating your own feed. Like you need to do that. I mean, we all need to do that for our own mental health anyway, but just in general, if you're going to go down this track, just get rid of all the things that you don't feel positive about or feel like have a positive impact on the industry. It's not necessarily that people are, bad people who are advertising these things. They might not just be as educated as you are or for whatever reasons. But I do think that that point of just absorbing content around fashion that's good for you is the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, can I just share this? One of my wins, I think, on my sustainable journey was the fact that I didn't buy any clothes for a year and a half, which was, comparing it to 6 years where I never really bought like a huge amount. But, when I kind of set myself the challenge, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do it. But what has really helped me was that I stopped reading certain blogs, because without realizing, anytime I was reading this American blog, I wanted to buy something. I felt like, oh, that's a really nice jumper, or that's, so I stopped reading that, and I unsubscribed from all the e-zines that I was getting from, somewhere that I bought before. And then, yeah, I defollowed people that I was following on social media that, were giving me that thing that I wanted to buy. And it has really worked, because then after about a year, I went on to read that blog again. And I swear, after, 20 minutes, I said, oh, I really like to buy that jumper. And I was like, oh my God, that's the temptations were there. So I completely agree that detoxing and being mindful of what you read is, because we're already bombarded all the time, so it's really, yeah, I think that's a really good tip.
Absolutely. And there's millions spent on trying to make us part with all our money for stuff we don't necessarily need as well. So just two of the hacks that I picked up when I started doing buying bans and I wasn't buying anything was to just not go near the shops, because if you don't see the beautifully visually merchandised windows, it's like Pavlov's dogs. Every time the bell goes off, I'm like, oh, I need the new thing. I need the new thing. I need the new thing. When you see this gorgeous window of stuff, but you don't really need it. And it was the same with ads. I was like reporting them, like not interested, blah, blah, blah. And now I don't get them on my feed at all. And it's incredible. So that's one good way to do it. And I do think like things like Depop are fantastic then, because essentially any of you can be sustainable fashion sellers overnight, which is brilliant. And there's another question from Trisha, which ties into this well, saying, do you think we need to slow down consumption completely, or is it enough to just switch to secondhand while continuing to consume high levels? Now, my personal take on that would be that we need to reduce consumption a lot still, and only buy what we really need, what we really want, and that we're going to wear loads of times. Don't buy anything that you're only wearing once, like if it's for a one-off event, whatever else. And just globally, if we could all reduce loads and go back even 2 generations. I remember my mom used to get like new Christmas clothes and maybe something for her birthday, not something for every night out, which I know is a trap I definitely fell into. And it's that kind of thing when you buy lots of stuff that's not necessarily high quality and that you don't love, or you're just getting it to stay on trend. Stopping trend shopping, I think, is a massive thing to stop consuming loads as well. You just find that you actually love then what you have in your wardrobe, because you've only bought stuff you love, and it's not going to be dated by season or anything else like that. So how do you guys think about that, consuming high levels but secondhand still good or no?
I think what you need to do though is try and separate out those two things, because I think lots of time in sustainability we try to be perfect and lump everything in together, but it's so hugely complex. I mean, the main thing to focus on is the stats around consumption. So by 2030, consumption is set to rise from 60 something million tons to 102 million tons of clothing every year, which translates into 500 billion t-shirts, new t-shirts being put on the earth annually. So that's what we want to reduce down, because they're the things that take up all the resources, create poverty wages and everything else that's happening in the industry at the moment. So if we try and reduce that consumption of brand new clothes down, it feeds into what we were talking about earlier, like the circular economy of, we'll use all of those clothes that have been consumed to turn them into secondhand clothes. So I think, yes, definitely we should buy less. And I mean, I go into charity shops sometimes and I buy things and I take them home like, did I really want that? That zipper doesn't fit right. I'm going to throw it back on Depop. And there's definitely environmental things, impacts of that, like there's the carbon emissions from shipping and stuff. But what we want to do is get the consumption of new clothes down. And if we all make that our primary focus, then what will happen is all brands will start to shift like that over time. It could take 10 years, it could take 20 years or whatever it is. Yes, buy less, but I think it's a huge expectation to think that broadly across society, we're all just going to start buying less, because we're dealing with a big, much bigger macro issue around consumption and capitalism and the economy and this whole other thing that we're not going to get into today. But it's endemic in our culture, consumption. So I think what we need to do right now for ourselves within the industry is try and shift people to a better way to consume less and consume secondhand if you can. That's my take on it.
Amazing. We've 2 really important questions I'm going to try and fly through in the last 2 minutes before we do our secondhand September competition, and just a big hello to Castlecomer Community School as well. They've commented there. So Aoife has asked, what do you think of high street brands like Zara, etc., releasing eco-friendly lines? Now, we could talk about this all day, because it's essentially delving into greenwashing. It's the same with H&M's Conscious collection, their new sentient clothes, apparently. Like, what does that even mean? Have you guys any thoughts on businesses that are essentially not revamping their exploitative business models? I think trying to just tap into more eco-friendly consumers without really overhauling or doing the most that they could be doing.
Yeah, well, that's a question that we get asked a lot at the Sustainable Life School, and personally, I wouldn't buy into that brand, because it's not good enough to me that they have, something that they marketed as a conscious collection that might of course, use maybe more sustainable material. But then if you look at the bigger picture of a brand of, say, H&M, their conscious collection, are they then paying their workers that, that living wage? Not. So it's only it's a small collection that, kind of meets the demands. So from one way, if you really want to, to stop saying H&M and buying from that conscious collection, I suppose maybe drives, and Kelly can comment on that, can drive that demand. Say, okay, well, people are, are really loving that. Personally, I still would stay away, because I think that they first need to tackle, the big issues of garment workers and environmental impact, and also kind of doing, throughout their collections, really. And the big elephant in the room is that obviously, they are, constantly, coming up with new trends and things to buy. So that's the main thing that, they're doing. So that would be my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that as well, because with those types of company models, regardless of what their product is like, the 2 issues that come up, and one Natty mentioned, are living wages to garment workers. Because if you're not paying people a living wage, you're suppressing their ability for social mobility, really, to be able to move up in the world and afford to feed their families and clothe them. And we saw it all in the documentary. So as a company, if you're not doing that, you're suppressing people's ability to be able to just, have a more flourishing, better quality of life. So I would look for the living wages thing. And then no matter, even if the collection is conscious, the waste aspect is phenomenal. I mean, I did mention that 500 billion t-shirts, but it's just phenomenal. And their business models are based on the sell fast, sell often, sell it cheap. And we're taught about consume. And then there's something like 85% of textiles are either incinerated or go to landfill every single year. And Natty, you mentioned earlier, that landfill isn't landfill in Ireland, and it's not landfill in the UK. It's landfill in countries like Ghana and Uganda and West African countries who definitely have thriving secondhand clothing markets, but those markets are even being destroyed because they're overrun by the volumes of clothes. So even though it might feel nice and feel good to buy a conscious collection, it's still an item of clothing, which I mentioned earlier, not to be like super depressing, but there is no closed loop, fully circular solution for. So I think no matter where you buy and what you buy, it just comes back to that thing. Do I really want it? Do I really need it? Am I going to wear it? I mean, there's an industry kind of like nice campaign of 30 wears kind of rule, I would argue, for 100 wears. But anyway, am I going to wear it for that amount of time? Can I swap it? Can I share it? Can I do all these cool things with it? It's just about, it doesn't matter what the product is or where it comes from. I mean, obviously, yes, buy the conscious collection if you are going to shop in those shops or go towards that, but don't just buy it because it's there. Buy it because you need it and you're going to value it, because now you know, after watching True Cost, what goes into making those products. So yeah.
Amazing. And I'm just going to answer this last one myself, and then we're going to head into the FashionFix challenge. Maura Walsh said, I see people putting clothes and cloth in rubbish. Can you please discuss this? From that, I would say the clothes should never end up in the bin. If it is not donatable to a charity shop, or if you can't give it away to a friend or someone else who wants it or will get wear out of it, do you know the big clothing banks that you'll see beside the bottle banks? You can put it in there, and those materials are generally going to be reused as a material. So that's a better way to go and do that. Don't think they should ever end up in the bin. Thank you so much for all of that insight. We could have talked about that all day. I'm going to hand back over to Grania for our FashionFix challenge.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, seconded. So we'll definitely follow up with loads of links, and any questions we didn't get to, we will, or you got to them all. Well done. Very good. But yeah, at the start of this webinar, I showed you a clip of our Secondhand September challenge that me and my colleagues did. So we'll go back to the 4 teams now and see what they ended up with, and see what our judges think.
Hi, I'm Kathy.
I'm Joanne, and we're here in sunny Dunleary today with €50 to spend for on and outfit for one of us in charity shops.
It's Secondhand September, so we're going to hit the shops.
Yay!
Full suit, next 40 quid. What's that, 20 quid? Amazing. 12 quid.
They're lovely.
Taking a little coffee and cake break
from the shop.
underneath the lovely tree.
Happy with your purchases, Gary?
Delighted. Yay, Secondhand September. Hey, how's it going? So, myself and Gone, been out doing our fashion haul in charity shops today, and absolutely delighted with what I got. Gorgeous suit and shorts for €34. I'm just really blown away with how much things have changed now in the second shops. A lot more choice for men, a lot more guys out there shopping. So, fellas, get out there. There's lots of great bargains to be had, and sustainably shopping. You're doing your bits as well. So, happy shopping.
Okay, so before I ask the judges what they think, I'm just going to give you a little bit more information about the 4 teams. So we had Trisha in Team Cork, and she spent €30.50 on her entire outfit. She got a Joseph Rubkoff top, £3, Penny skirt, £4.50, Penny's bag, €4, Dunn's jacket, £9.50, Marco Chozzi shoes, €8, and a necklace, an amazing £1.50. So that is Team Cork. Next up, we have Gary in Team Liberties, and he spent €35. So we got a next 2-piece suit for £30 and a Penny's shirt for €5. And the shoes are the model's own. And we did find it harder to get men's shoes in Gary's size in the charity shops, but I do think it's getting better. Now, next up we have Kathy from Team Dunleary, and she spent £30. She got a gorgeous dress from Whistles for €10, and I think she said it is 100% silk. She got Echo boots for €15 and a bag which had no label for €5. And last but certainly not least, we have Kira, who came in at the lowest budget. So they all had €50 to spend, but Kira got her entire outfit for €17.90. She got her jeans from Penny's for €7, jumper, also no label, €3, a Ruth Langsford jacket, €7.90, and the shoes are the model's own. And then we just have one tiny little extra special entry. So oh my God. This is Kira's kid Moya. So she got her this coat for €6.90 as well, and I think it's from Dunn's. So judges, you've seen the 4 teams who thrifted entire outfits for under €50. Who are you going to crown the Climate Action Week fashionista? Is it going to be Team Cork, Team Liberties, Team Dunleary, or Team D7?
So difficult. They're all like great.
Yeah, I think they're all going to encourage people to go charity shopping.
Oh, yeah.
For the sake of the accessorizing to a T as well, I think I'm giving it to Cork with a runner-up of Gary. Out of Dublin 7, or Dublin, sorry, the Liberties, a bit biased. That's my local charity shop run here as well. But so impressed by all of them. I think if any of them turned around to their friends and said, oh, I got it all in charity shop, they'd be shocked and they'd be delighted, and they'd be running off to follow them in and see what they could find themselves. So it's brilliant to see.
Amazing. And what about you, Natalie? Who would you vote for?
Yeah, really tough. I mean, Gary looks so fancy, like, but I'm looking at it. Sometimes it's difficult to put all the pieces together. So I really like Dublin 7. The style, it's so nicely put together, and so I'll give my vote to Dublin 7.
Amazing. And what about yourself, Callie?
I'm going to give my vote to Gary, because I do think a lot of the times in the fashion industry, you get people thinking that it's just for women and women who are into fashion, whereas actually it's clothing, and we all wear clothing every single day, whatever it is, if it's your school uniform, or if it's that you're getting dressed up for a night out, or tracksuit or sportswear. So it's just having this awareness that we're not talking about fashion. I mean, we are kind of, but we're talking about the whole entire clothing industry. And I know the availability of new sustainable brands and secondhand clothing is a lot harder. And I just think he did so well for £35 to get a whole entire suit and a shirt. So yeah, hopefully it will encourage some other men out there to go and just have a browse around the shops, walk in and see what you can find.
Absolutely. It was actually so much fun. I took him shopping and I very nearly got him into a sequined top. But we went with the suit in the end.
Getting stylist credits there.
You could put the top under the suit for Saturday night if you wanted to be a bit jazzy.
Yeah, that's what it was, red and sequined. It was fun. Okay, so that's what our judges think, but I will take it to the public vote. So I'm going to launch this poll, and everyone who is still here with us today, thanks for sticking around. Let us know who you think should be crowned the Climate Action Week fashionista. Is it Team Cork, Team Liberties, Team Dunleary, or Team Dublin 7? Ooh, looks like the Liberties and D7 are in a tie. Oh, D7 is taking over. I'll give it another minute. Looks like Kira is in the lead. Liberties is coming back strong. Go on, the Liberties.
Things are
It's gonna
good
be a
stuff.
tie.
Different outfits there as well, from like lovely young outfits for a fun day out to really professional outfits from the Dunleary team. I just think they're all fantastic, different ways to kind of go about secondhand styling.
Absolutely. I know Kathy actually wore her dress out, I think the Saturday after she got it, and has said like it's her back to work kind of look, you know, for events and stuff.
And actually mentioning that her dress is 100% silk as well. I shriek with joy when I'm in a charity shop and I find like 100% wool, 100% silk, all of that stuff. Because now, because we were talking about earlier, the 60% of clothing are made from polyester. They're the gems. And if you find them at a really good price, it's amazing. And if you look after them, they'll last forever.
Absolutely. I actually got this dress in my local charity shop in Rush. It's Karen Millen and I got it for €8. And I was just like, quick, get out of the shop before they realize.
It hovers over your shoulder.
Amazing. Right, I'll end that poll now. And let me see, do I have, oh yeah, I just want to say before we go, I know we're running a tiny bit over time, but thanks everyone for sticking around and happy Climate Action Week. And yeah, check out the Green School's Let's Fix Fashion program, which is just starting this week. And yeah, just find out more about it. And I hope you're feeling like really amazing and inspired. And just thank you so much to our amazing host, Fionnuala. Thank you so much. And our two fabulous panelists, Kelly and Natalie. You're both like just really inspiring. It's fabulous to get your insight into the industry background, and yeah, I just find your journeys all really inspiring. So thank you so much. And yeah, happy Climate Action Week.
Thanks for having us.
So much.
Thanks a million.
Awesome. Yeah, if anyone wants to follow us on social media, just follow the hashtag Climate Action Week. And I think Gary's going to pop our link tree in the chat as well. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. And yeah, have a fabulous day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.